I'm Len Berry, author of The Nightlands. This is the video annotation for Chapter 1. I wanted to start with Atsuko, since she is going to be the most impacted character by the events of the story, whether it's in her point of view chapters or not. I also wanted to show dragons quite quickly, because they are the most efficient form of transportation in this world, but also because Atsuko is going to be connected to a dragon, a very special dragon. Don't want to say a whole lot about that now, but that's going to be a lot of her driving plot, is this connection to a dragon that's going to come up. It'll be a few chapters away, though. She has, of course, been captured by the Ashurians. They originated from the country of Ashuria. They are officially the followers of the religion Helio-Ashura, which is also their name for the sun. Since they are sun worshippers in a world that has eternal sunlight, never dawn, dusk. There's actually no day-night cycle. It's constantly overhead. The sunlight is going to be a much more brutal and dangerous factor on everyday life. Because of that, the Ashurians are also death worshippers as much as they are sun worshippers. We will also see instances where they're essentially literally empowered by death. But since they are death worshippers, they are trying ultimately to make the entire world die. Unfortunately, to make this happen, they've decided they're going to go last. Not first, last. Sorry, they're not going to rid themselves. They're not going to rid us of themselves, else we wouldn't have plot. Because such groups like this can exist and become one of the dominant forces in the world. You can tell that it's a very brutal world, very rough place. You'll see as the story continues, you'll see all manner of creatures doing everything they can to devour the main characters. You'll see rough landscapes, just terrible conditions, whatever it may be. I wanted to portray a place where survival is harder than in most fantasy stories. Not all, but a lot of them. Not just a simple thing of life is hard. It's like a more uncertain level of life. So those places that do have a lot of resources, they're going to actually be less inclined to have a massive amount of fatalities, higher life expectancy, that sort of thing. That's why they're the nicer places to live, which of course will make them giant targets in this setting. The fight to survive, or even thrive in this world, is going to be one of the main themes. Not just for Atsuko, but also for the other main characters as they're introduced. But getting back to Atsuko, though, I should point out that because of her deformity, her eye, which has been deformed since birth, she's had to become much more self-sufficient. And that's because my thought was that she's someone who had been passed over for any kind of marriage agreements or anything like that. Very few people would look at her caravan and want to kidnap her and take her away and do whatever. She's not going to be the one who's ever picked out. Thus, she has to become much more self-determined, self-reliant. What she does, she has to be capable of herself. That's also why I have her throw the punch the guy who tries to take advantage of her, partially to show a little bit of her own personal conviction, but also to kind of give a little bit of comedy to this opening scene, because so many rough things happen in such a short span of time, just a few pages. I mean, the cage she's in gets dropped by the dragon carrying it. You see another cage of people, just the people in it get eaten. And then, this guy tries to take advantage of her. There are other people doing the same thing inside the same cage. There needed to be something for a life. It's also why I have her punch the guy again just a few pages later. Eventually, we do get to the sanctuary. Sanctuaries in this setting are going to be floating land masses. They can be various sizes, but you can live on them if they're big enough. They're going to float in space. They're not going to fall or anything like that. As things continue, we'll see other places like this. This particular sanctuary, it has a mountain range on it, which from that mountain range they've actually built this pyramid, this temple. They've actually carved it from the mountain range itself and from the inside of the sanctuary itself too, which we'll see in later chapters too. One of the other things that's important about places like sanctuaries is that you want to get off the ground, ideally. If you live in this world, life on the ground is very difficult. You're going to be exposed more often. It's going to be harder to get to a different set of resources. Say you're hungry, well, food's 7 leagues away. That's a 7-league trip. That's not a short trip. With a dragon, or if you live off the ground, you can just make a simple order. And sure, it might be a 7-league trip, but if you're using some sort of flying conveyance dragon, you can get there very quickly. Also, I should point out, going back to the whole note of it being a brutal world, that there are some hints at this point about the time they arrive of cannibalism, and I'll warn you now on that. I'll warn you again before this video is over. Yes, there is cannibalism, and a place where resources are scarce, you want to monitor what you do have, what you don't have, especially a high altitude sanctuary like this one, run by a group of Ashurians. Yes, there's going to be cannibalism. Fair warning. Also, there's notes of, I note that a lot of people have red hair in the group that's been deposited here on this sanctuary. That's actually a genetic marker for a likelihood of having magic ability. You'll notice that Sorcha Kagatsu, the seventh spire of Imperia, who runs this place, she also has red hair. Despite their skin color or anything like that, red hair is going to be the big indicator of possibility of magic, even if it's just tint of red hair or a few locks of it. Speaking of Sorcha Kagatsu, she's alright. I'll level with you. She's my intended villain. So, but I don't like to play villains as being strict good guys, strict bad guys, something like that. So, she's pretty mean right off, but we'll see some sides to her that are not quite so bad. Maybe she won't stay a villain, but again, wait and see sort of thing. She does use this place kind of as a school, her own personal place to develop the next batch of Imperia and Imperions that will come to serve Helio Ashura. And of course, because of her position, this is essentially a manifestation of this religion in her. She orders the group that has been deposited here to fight each other, and it's kind of telling in this sequence. Atsuko is not a fighter; she's a nomad essentially, and any combative skill she has is more to escape with a small animal, perhaps. So the fact that she isn't a fighter and now she's going to have to actually kill to survive, that's a real test for her right there. It also kind of proves just how brutal this fight is. It proves just how brutal the Assyrians are, because they just took all this effort to capture these people and bring them up to this sanctuary, and now, okay, you gotta kill somebody you came here with. Yeah. They just crazy. Oh, come on. Sorcha Kagatsu, after the fight is over, makes a point of saying to leave my kills in the dirt. She's wanting to prove how powerful her magic is. I mean, she's a significant distance away. This sanctuary's been refined to make it where she can speak in a loud voice and somebody will hear her on the other side of it. That's pretty impressive, seeing how she's got a mountain range behind her. So her spells can go off from a long distance. Also, the corrosion on those she kills, it's actually a side effect of their body is becoming toxic from being killed by her. Sort of an interference with her death magic. Her magic is in fact empowered by death, so the more she kills, the stronger she gets. It's also the reason why she leaves them in the dirt, because, let's say, hinting toward the next bit, if someone was to chance to eat something, animal, person, whatever, that was killed by a magic blast, it would be toxic and they would probably die from it as well. One of the guards says, pick that meat up, when indicating some of the killed people who have been brought to the sanctuary as well. Again, this is a pretty rough place. These are rough people, and this is the sort of thing that this death religion is going to do. Again, fair warning on that. But really, that's the bulk of it for chapter 1. I invite any questions that might come along. You can leave a question here on the page for this video. You can get a hold of me on Twitter at the Nightlands has a Twitter. It's at @the_night_lands. You can also check out further entries in the story at thenightlands.wordpress.com, and my personal blog is at lentberry.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and watching, I should say, and I'll see you next time.